We made every mistake in the book. It just felt like getting punched in the gut, clawing my way back. Never again will someone have to learn the lessons I learned the way that I learned them. Pivoting when you need to pivot. My goal is to get people together.
Hey everyone, Dave Menz, Laundromat Millionaire here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we are back today with a fantastic and exciting episode of Laundromat Millionaire Business Podcast. I am here with my beautiful wife, Carla, as usual, and I am here with a good friend of mine. I suspect that my audience is going to recognize him and possibly some of his work that he's doing to drive the laundromat industry forward. This is an episode I've been excited about and had on the schedule and planned since we launched Laundromat Millionaire Business Podcast. And I'm super excited to bring it to you today. Carla, you want to tell them about our guest?
Okay, so today we have with us Jordan Berry from Laundromat Resource. Jordan lives in Los Angeles, California, where he owns laundromats, as well as he is the creator of Laundromat Resource, which is a platform to help others buy, optimize, and scale their laundromat business. He also provides resources, education, and networking opportunities with other laundromat business professionals. Jordan, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, guys. That was a very generous introduction, although I'm a little disappointed I didn't also get beautiful.
Oh, and beautiful Jordan Berry.
I tell you what, guys, for the people listening out there, these people from California, I don't know what it is with these people. All the women are pretty, but the men are too. What's up with that? What is up with that, folks? As a Midwest guy in Cincinnati, I just don't understand. I don't understand it. Then again, some of us just naturally have it. Some of us have to work for it, I guess. I won't say where I fall into that category.
I think you're pretty.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
My friend, thank you so much for being willing to do this. I'm super excited to have you on the show to talk about all the awesome things you're doing. For those of you that don't know, Jordan is the host of the Laundromat Resource podcast, which is, 60, 70, 80 episodes at this point, something like that. And he's a rock star in our industry. He's doing amazing things. If you haven't checked out his podcast, you need to go check it out. Episode number 2 is one of my favorites of all time. And by the way, that's actually one of the ones that I was on. So go check that out because I have a record that I'm trying to keep in place of being what is it, Jordan? The most downloaded podcast or something?
That's the most downloaded episode
Yep.
still.
So I am shamelessly going to use my platform to plug and keep that record as long as I possibly can, because eventually he's going to have some more amazing guests on there, and I'm just going to fall off by the wayside.
I can't even imagine who that would be.
So hard to compete.
It is. It is.
Dave Menz from Ohio.
Right.
Big time. He's big time.
Yeah. Big time. I'm a legend. I'm a legend in my own mind. Listen, let's get right to it because I have got so much I want to talk about. And, for those of you that know Jordan, he's a little long-winded. He likes to talk a lot. I try to keep things short.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. I knew that was coming. So anyways, but listen, we want to jump in and tell your story because one of the things I love about Jordan and the Laundromat Resource podcast is he does an amazing job of telling other people's stories, of pulling out the stories. For those of you that watched episode 1 and 2 of me and Carla telling our story, he was our guest host. So he hosted our show, which was an incredible honor, and he did an amazing job. But the reality is not enough people in the industry are talking about Jordan. And they're not talking about what Jordan is doing for the industry, with the industry, as far as bringing value, because he's always spending so much time talking about other people and what they're doing. So this show is going to be about bringing to light what Jordan has been doing, all of the tireless work that he has been putting in to drive our industry forward, to bring value to all of us laundromat owners throughout the country. And so we really want to just take this opportunity to share with our audience all the amazing things that he's doing and his unique story about getting into the laundromat industry, because it's unique and there's a lot of lessons to learn there. So Jordan, as you know, because I know you're a huge number one fan of the show, as you know, we like to start off the show by getting just a little bit of kind of your backstory. We feel like that gives people a little context for. So can you tell us a little bit about your backstory, just kind of how you grew up real quickly?
Yeah. Yeah. So I am a huge fan of the show, by the way, probably your number one fan. And
Thank you.
that is a title that I hold.
Very dear.
Yeah. A little bit about my backstory is, well, it's, it's kind of this path that weaves all over the place. But I grew up here in Southern California and grew up super poor, actually. Lived on a pig farm that was once an internment camp, in half of a trailer. And my upbringing was great. I have great parents, loving and all that, but we were pretty poor kind of growing up. I remember my mom saving pennies because my favorite food was and still is McDonald's French fries. And she would save up to buy me McDonald's French fries as a kid. That was a big deal. So grew up like that. But didn't stay there. My dad worked hard and got lucky. And, we had a comfortable middle class, lifestyle, sort of the second half of my childhood. I went to college and studied physics at college, and then
Why? What did you want to do with
I love
that?
physics, man.
I love physics too, but what were you hoping to do with that?
I don't love physics, just so we're clear.
Well, I'd say you're probably in the majority.
Probably.
I really wanted to do aerospace stuff. Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL's here. Well,
nice.
SpaceX wasn't around at the time, but it's here now, and would have set me up real nice. But towards the end of my junior year of college, I got a quote unquote part-time job as a youth pastor at a church, and was like, this is awesome, I love it. And so with a year left to get my physics degree, I decided to transfer schools, change my major from physics to youth ministry. And
That's a high-paying profession.
Well, prestige is what I chase. And
most do in the laundromat industry.
That's
what we're all here for.
That's usually why we end up here.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I got here. So glamorous, prestigious, those are words that describe me and everything I desire.
But what an awesome calling. I'm guessing you felt called to do the youth ministry.
I did, and it was awesome. I mean, took me a couple more years to finish college. There's not a lot of overlap between the courses you take in physics and in youth ministry.
Right.
And honestly, that youth ministry degree was a lot more difficult for me because there's a lot more reading. I don't know, just math is just like pretty straightforward. And
very black and white. There's no gray area.
Yeah, people are not straightforward.
No.
So anyways, got my youth ministry degree. I was doing youth ministry all throughout. I moved up to the Bay Area, did youth ministry up there for 8 years, moved back down to Southern California, did youth ministry there for another, I think 5 or 6 years. So a total of 15 years. And along the way, well, actually, getting that youth ministry degree, there was a course on studying and teaching the Bible. And my wife was in that class. And so I met her, well, my now wife. So I met her there in that class. And so we got married. Just after I graduated, but right after I moved up to the Bay Area. So, and then somewhere along the way, we had a couple kids, and life got crazy, and youth ministry was taking me all over. I mean, it was so cool. I've been all over the world doing all kinds of cool stuff, from, Europe to Africa to South America, kind of all over, which was very cool. But, when you have young kids and you're being dragged all over the place and late night calls with crises all the time, and it was just time for me to take a break from doing that as a job. But I had no idea what to do, from there. Youth ministry degree, 15 years of youth ministry experience, and it just doesn't translate to a whole lot of other things. So we had a chunk of change, and we had saved up in no direction in life. And so what we decided to do, my plan, let me just tell you my genius.
I love your plan, by the way.
Yeah, it was to take that money, and we owned our house in Southern California here. And so my plan was to rent out that house, take that money, go buy a condo on the beach in Hawaii, go live in Hawaii for a couple years. I don't know, sell jewelry on the beach and braid
Have a
people's hair,
surf
whatever.
shop.
Yeah, whatever you do over there. I don't know. Didn't
I
matter
don't
really.
know.
You're in Hawaii, right? And then when our kids, were school aged, then we could move back to our house in Southern California and rent out our condo in Hawaii and net gain condo in Hawaii. I thought it was genius. And I still think it was genius. But my wife said, well, why don't we buy a laundromat? And I was like, whoa, what? I don't know if I've ever even been to a laundromat.
So how did she, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. How did she
Yeah.
come to that conclusion?
Yes,
I mean, she
that's a
didn't,
great-
she must have just, she couldn't have just got up one day and tripped. I mean, was she looking into
No.
business ideas, or how did that come up?
No, this was out of the blue for her. Like, I did not see this she is very, very conservative with our money and not a risk taker, not a like deviate from the plan kind of person. I mean, I kind of deviated us from the plan when I got out of youth ministry, but how it came about for her is her parents have a family friend who have a son. So we're going down the line here.
Okay.
So family friend have a son who had a job in like a high paying job in Silicon Valley, and he quit it and bought a laundromat and was loving it. And he loved what Brian Wallace called, the CEO of the Coin Laundry Association was on the podcast. He called it flex time. And I like that. So this laundromat had a lot of flex time for him. And my wife heard about it and was like, well, why don't we just do that? And the concept of using our money to buy a business or an asset that created money for us was completely foreign, had never crossed my mind whatsoever, never once. And I was like, actually, it sounds like a really, really good idea. And so we took our money and we bought a laundromat, not a condo in Hawaii. And it was horrible. It was horrible experience. We
Why?
made every mistake in the book. I didn't know, aside from this kind of sort of family friend guy, I didn't know anybody else in the industry. I tried to go into quite a few laundromats to talk to owners, and either they weren't there or I got chased out of the laundromats by the owners because I'm assuming they were afraid I was coming in to compete with them or something like that. I got yelled at quite a few times. And so I was like very gun shy, and I was very new in the business and I did not know what I was doing at all. So basically I had to rely solely on the broker who was helping me buy the laundromat. And unfortunately that was not it just didn't work out well for me.
Yeah.
He kind of took advantage of that situation a little bit. And I ended up buying a laundromat that I knew it was in rough shape. Okay. There's no pretense about that. And I was planning on coming in and putting all new equipment in anyway. So that was the plan. But what I didn't know is it was a very rough neighborhood. First of all, funny story. My very first day coming in, I walked in and there is a lady completely naked in there, washing her clothes, completely naked.
Well, how else are they going to get clean?
No, I know. I mean, it makes sense. I just,
Usually wear something else.
Yeah.
All clean.
Yeah. So, you just,
Wow.
you don't want to start off the next day with dirty laundry.
Right. That's rough.
The
That's
stuff
rough.
you're wearing today, you just wouldn't wash it all.
So
So
what was your reaction to that?
I was like, what did I get myself into? That was my reaction. Like, what did I do? And that was tip of the iceberg. So there was, I'd find needles all the time. There were two prostitutes working out of it. It was gang turf. And so I literally found myself in a turf war with a gang, and had some altercations, physical altercations. So, it was just,
What did you even do there? Did the police help you or?
I would call the police. Sometimes they'd be right there and sometimes they'd be there in 3 or 4 hours.
Oh,
So
wow.
it just really depended. So, a few times they showed up and save the day, and I didn't have to fight for my own business. And a few times I fought for my own business, and of course, come on, of course I won the fights. I mean, look at this.
You got the ribbon, right? Don't they give you a ribbon if you win?
That's right. That's right.
Or a belt, a title belt.
I got them on the wall over here. Title belt. No, but I mean, it got to a point where I would drive to the laundromat. I was, and I was cleaning up the laundromat every day, and I would get to the laundromat and I would sit in my car for like an hour. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to walk into when I walk in there. And the last thing I want to do is walk into that laundromat right now.
Oh.
And on top of all that, I was losing $1,500 a month when I was expecting to be making, I mean, the numbers the broker gave me were, I was going to be rich in no time, right? Like, I was like, this is awesome. And
so he provided you with a pro forma, which was an estimate of what you could do if you, or were the numbers that were given to you that the business was doing at the time you bought it bad numbers? Or was the predictions, the pro forma bad?
There were no numbers. He's like, we don't have to worry about what the business is doing now because you're going to be putting in new machines. So here's what it will be doing based on the new machines. So I didn't analyze that laundromat. I didn't do any due diligence. I didn't know that I needed to. I mean, listen, I had no business getting into business. Okay. I will freely admit that. I just did not know anything. And a lot of the pain, heartache, and financial loss is my own doing. I'm not blaming anybody else. Like, sure, he misled me, but ultimately that responsibility is on me. But it was just a horrible situation to be in. It put a lot of stress on me, and it put a lot of stress on our marriage too. As any financial distress will do that to any relationship, right? Is like when you're losing money, when you're not bringing in as much money as going out, that puts a lot of stress on individuals and on relationships. So, and it did put a lot of stress on us. And it got to a point where we just had to make an agreement where we wouldn't communicate about the laundromat at all anymore. My wife just could not handle the stuff that was going on over there. She couldn't handle watching, like having to pay bills without money in the bank, or having to have late bills because there was no money to pay, and I really hated that too. I'm at a point now where I'm like, well, if there's a late bill, there's a late bill. They'll just have to deal with it. Right. But that was a huge deal for me at the time. So it was rough. So we bought another one.
Seems like a natural progression.
This business, this is horrible. Let's buy another one. To clarify, did you get the first one profitable? Like, had you turned it around before you bought the second, or you just were digging a deeper hole? I'm
gonna give you an opportunity to take a guess.
I don't know if I want to guess. That might be insulting.
It will not be insulting. You are not profitable.
So before you go into this, can I get a little context? How long was this between your first store and your second store? How long was this tough, really tough journey of just one store?
Okay. So it was like a year from when we made the offer, and about a year and a half from when we closed, because there was a bunch of things that happened during due diligence, which I did do on my second one. So no, it was not profitable at this point. So
were you making progress?
Yeah.
Was it getting better?
Yeah. I mean, listen, we had doubled income from what it was when we started.
Sure.
And it's still, I mean, we weren't losing $1,500 a month anymore, but we were still losing $500 a month.
So I'm guessing at this point you had bought new equipment, I'm guessing.
Yeah. New equipment in there.
Okay.
Totally renovated the place. It was looking good. What I didn't anticipate was it took a lot longer to rehab the reputation of the laundromat than it took to rehab the actual laundromat. And that proved pretty difficult to do. So,
people were still scared to go there.
Yeah. I mean, it was scary to go there. Yeah. It was. So So yeah, we had made a lot of progress, but we were not profitable. But here was my thought process on the second one. And again, I've
No,
nowhere.
I think that's important to know because I mean,
Yeah.
I know you beat yourself up a little bit over this, but the reality is, I mean, you're not alone. I mean, there's a million people out there that,
No.
I mean, there's a reason that what is the small business failure rate's roughly 50% in the first 5 years, and it's like
Yeah.
close to 95% in the second, meaning within 10 years,
Yeah.
95% of small businesses fail. So you're certainly not alone in this, but I kind of want to dig into the lessons behind this and what you've learned that
Yeah.
have made you successful now so that we can help other people avoid those things.
Yeah. Well, okay, real quick caveat is that everybody kept throwing out this whole like 95% success rate on laundromats,
Yeah.
which is not a great feeling when you are just struggling
When you're in
for
the 5%.
a long period of time. And I've like always been, well, I shouldn't say I've always been, I've always thought of myself as like very capable and like, decently.
Well, you were working your butt off. I mean,
Yeah.
you were working hard at it and it wasn't going great.
It wasn't working. So, I mean, that's going to lead to why I do what I do now.
Sure.
But my thought process in buying the second one was, listen, my options now are to just cut my losses and get out. And I will probably have to pay some money to get out of it because, now I have this loan out and it's not worth, for equipment, and it's not worth what I owe on the loan. So do I take the loss on everything I spent to buy the laundromat? I bought the laundromat cash, and take a big loss on equipment on top of it and just, lick my wounds and do something different? Or do I say, you know what? I've paid a lot of money and I've paid a lot of emotional capital to learn some very difficult and very expensive lessons that I probably could have learned a lot easier and cheaper. But I didn't know how. So I've done that. So do I take that and double down and go, go full bore? And it wasn't honestly, it was not a conscious decision to go buy a second one. What happened was, somebody that I had met along the way in the industry brought me an off-market deal for a laundromat ad and property, and the seller was willing to seller finance a big chunk of it. So
very nice.
So I was like, wow, and that was a tough conversation with my wife, by the way, is, we're losing money. We're at a point where we're not talking about the laundromat at all. And here I come. This is not atypical of me, but this is very atypical of her. And I come with this idea to buy a second one. And so, after some tough conversations, we decided to double down and buy that second one. So we did. So we bought the second one, bought the property. What I did know a lot better than I knew business was real estate. And we bought very well in terms of the real estate. So I figured even if I screw up the business part of it again, the real estate, the equity that we'll have in the real estate will cover us if we need to sell it all. It'll all.
So this was roughly a year to a year and a half from buying your first one to buying your second one.
Yeah, we closed on our second one about a year and a half after.
So the truth of the matter is, even though you had a really tough go, you had way more education and knowledge and experience, because the reality is in life, like, yeah, we learn from what we do right, but oftentimes we learn more from what we do wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing during that year and a half, you were trying to figure out what am I doing wrong and what should I be doing right? And I'm guessing you were trying to learn from other laundromat owners. You were trying to network. You were trying to meet other people. And I'm sure some of that was met with success and some was met with, obstacles like being kicked out of laundromats and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But you still had a year and a half's worth of knowledge, good, bad, or indifferent, that you learned from that time frame. So you had to be more confident in yourself that, hey, how likely am I to make this type of mistake again? Because I'm not starting where I was starting 2.5 years ago. I'm starting with a big leg up. Was that kind of your thought behind, like, how much worse can it get?
No.
Okay.
And here's why. I mean, everything you said is, I mean, I did do all those things. And I desperately sought all that out. But honestly, man, my self-confidence was low in terms
low.
of the business stuff.
Mhm.
In terms of like my fighting skills and stuff, man, I was at an all-time
All-time
high.
high. UFC type
I got the
stuff.
belt over here.
Right.
No, but seriously, man, I was not confident. And because even though, business had doubled, I think a lot of that had to do with a couple things. Number one, having new equipment that was more reliable, that would, people weren't playing the lottery as to put the quarters in, see if the machine's going to work anymore. And, it's clean now and that kind of thing. But, and the other thing that was good was I was talking to customers and hearing what they had to say and, just getting to know them. Like to this day, I have great relationships with so many customers at that store. I just went to, a funeral of, unfortunately, a kid. Well, it was his 18th birthday and he passed away. And,
Wow.
knew the family I knew him since he was like 11. And, but it's those kinds of things where you become part of the community and you learn about the community. It's not just hearing like, what do you like? What do you not like? It's hearing who you are as a person, and, and then thinking about, okay, how can I serve you better, as a laundromat owner. Right. So those things, yes. But in terms of understanding the business, like I still had no confidence that, I had, I guess, just enough to try again.
Do you feel like the real estate, knowing real estate and knowing you were buying that right was like you mentioned a minute ago, how can I almost go wrong with this? Like,
Yeah.
was that the thing that pushed you over the edge? Was something you had confidence in?
Yeah, much more so. And I don't think I would have bought another laundromat at that point, or maybe ever. I don't know. If it was just, in a strip center somewhere and I was renting. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can make a lot of money with that. So I don't want anybody to hear that. But just because of my experience and because I didn't have confidence that I could make the business work because I hadn't done it yet. Yeah. So that's kind of where I was at, man. I was pretty low, but I was also kind of hopeful that this business would help cover my mistakes of my other business, which, by the way, I'm still paying. This is like 7 years later. I'm still paying for the mistakes I've made in various ways at that other laundromat. So
Really?
yeah. So
Like in what ways? Is it profitable now?
it was at an all-time high, doing awesome, profitable everything right before COVID. And it got hit so hard, way harder than my other one during COVID. And it's still clawing its way back. I'm probably even now at that one again. This is almost a year and a half.
Almost
later.
A year and a half. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that one's it's been tough. Right. And the other thing that I found is what happens at that one, because it was gang turf at one point, when people have been locked up, get released, they've been locked up a while and they don't know there's a new sheriff in town at this laundromat, right? Then they pop back up. And that hasn't really happened in a little while now. It's probably been a year and a half at least, but that kind of thing happens. And so you just have to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a very valuable lesson for just security in any business, but laundromat specifically, because we're, so often unattended or partially attended or what have you. The laundromat for the bad guys in any neighborhood, it tends to be like what they see as low-lying fruit, because a lot of times it isn't. The oversight isn't there. The security isn't there. And if it is there, it's very hit and miss. It's not consistent. So yeah, if you catch me there today and kick me out, I'll wait till you leave, and 3 hours later you'll be gone and I'll still be here.
Yeah.
Because this is my turf, which is how they see it, right? But I think that's common in a lot of laundromat environments, is just having that tenacity to kind of push through, that stubbornness to be like, no, this is actually my turf.
Yep.
And that can take years. My story, our first store that we got into, it didn't take us, 3 or 4 months But this isn't LA and this wasn't gang turf. This was Amelia, Ohio, which is a lot different, but it was the bad part of Amelia, Ohio, if there's such a thing.
We had some
Um,
homeless, some
we,
drunks, some drugs.
yeah, and we had a few altercations and things like that, but they figured out real quickly that they needed to find somewhere else to go, and I think there was other places to go.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's that adversity pushing through can what's the old saying? It what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Do you feel like that makes you a better laundromat owner and probably even a person nowadays? I can't imagine it wouldn't.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And real quick, I just want to quick caveat is that
Mhm.
not all laundromats are like this. Okay.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah.
This
if you're
is
looking to get in the business,
I would
this
argue
is
this is like a worst case scenario
this is
almost.
an
I can't
extreme example.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's much worse than this as two people, you and I, that talk to people all the time in this industry. This
Yeah.
is possible, but it's not very likely. I mean, once again, we're talking about LA. Like when LA is a
Yeah.
pretty big area, pretty rough area. LA gangs are kind of known for being, the worst of the worst type of thing in a lot of cases. So yeah, I think it's a worst case scenario for sure.
Yeah. And not even in LA. I mean, even in LA, this is extreme for LA.
Okay.
So
All
I don't want to deter anybody from this business because
Mhm.
of that story. Part of it was because of the area, part of it because, you know, I, I was a pastor forever. So I would
Mhm.
say things like, hey, it's just not like you shouldn't really be hanging out here. You know, it's not a big deal, but just don't
Yeah.
hang out here anymore.
Right.
And you have to be able to talk to people in a way that they can hear. And
Mhm.
that's not a way that these people can hear you. They don't respect that.
That's right.
So you need to tell them in a way that they can hear you. It took me a while to figure that out. So
Yeah.
anyways, I just wanted to say that this is not the case for everybody. And even in LA, this is an
Mhm.
extreme case. So yeah, but all that to say, yes, I mean, I feel like it's made me a stronger owner, and I feel like it's made me, what's really interesting is that things that used to seem like a really big deal, or like problems that used to feel incredibly overwhelming, they don't even register anymore. That my capacity to deal with problems has grown so much, um, mentally, and also just being able to juggle more things going on, right? I'd have a customer who quarters jammed over here, and a customer who spilled laundry detergent over there, and I'd be like, this is
Right.
crazy. And now it's like, okay, that's not a big deal at all. Or even like a late bill used to be a huge deal for me, and it just is what it is now. So
It's
Yeah.
like it put you through the school of hard knocks on how to deal with adversity. You're
Yeah.
like, no problem now. I
Yeah.
beat out the gangs.
Well, I think that's we're all about being transparent on this show, as you know, and I know that's who you are as a person, and telling the good, bad, and the ugly about small business. So I appreciate you sharing this honesty and transparency. But there's a lot of cliches that run out there in the world, like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But the reality is, it's true. When we talk about things like the school of hard knocks, yeah, that's just some relative term we're throwing out there. But the reality is, like, there's an education process there. There's a growing process. There's a maturity process that happens during those phases of our lives that ultimately make us more prepared to do better and greater things. And that's really what I want to jump into now. So before we jump into the awesome stuff you're doing, tell me real quickly, kind of, and I know we're still in the middle of COVID. We're trying to work our way back out of it. For those that are watching this in the future, this is recorded in June of 2021. So we're, like Jordan said, almost exactly a year and a half into COVID, and they're trying to, take some of these mandates down and let us get back to life and things like that. But let's talk before COVID. Where were the stores at, let's call it their best? I would assume pre-COVID was where you were kind of at your best. You had been owning these two stores and this one commercial property for what, 6 years, 5.5 years at
Mhm.
that point? Were they
Mhm.
both profitable? I mean, you don't have to share exact numbers, but I mean,
Yeah.
they were both profitable, viable businesses that are helping to provide for your family. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. Yeah. And helping the community.
Mhm.
And I mean, it was, and I mean, honestly, man, life was so different and so much lighter at that point in time. And I mean, talk about like just, getting sucker punched is the biggest thing for me was finally, it was like 4 years it took me to get that
Mhm.
first laundromat profitable. And I was like, oh, I felt so good. I was like, I finally joined the 95% success.
Right.
Cost me a lot, but, um, and I mean, it just felt like getting punched in the gut when COVID hit and just everything just tanked.
I don't want a piece of you. I want the whole thing.
That was rough, but yeah, okay, yes. So the laundromat's profitable and life was good and the community was happy and it was very, it's not, I mean, having a profitable business is awesome, but having a profitable business that's actually, helping other people's lives, even in just
Absolutely.
one small daily chore or weekly chore or whatever it is monthly.
So you reach the point where you're roughly 5 years into your journey. You have two stores and a commercial property. They're profitable. You're feeling good about yourself. You're maybe even reconsidering going and buying that condo in Hawaii now with all this
Mhm.
laundromat money that you're making. And COVID hits, which
Uh-huh.
is, we can all, embellish that as much as we want and probably not do justice, but a
Yeah.
lifetime pandemic that literally shuts down the globe. And
Mhm.
you get whatever, I would say a fourth or fifth punch in the gut at this point, which we all did, but you had already been taking them for 10 rounds.
Yeah.
And that's awful. And I'm curious. So what we eventually wanted to get to in this story is the Laundromat Resource and that business and that platform that you have built and continue to build that is just serving our industry in amazing ways. So am I understanding the timing right that you launched Laundromat Resource in the middle of COVID? When
Yeah.
did do I am I
Yeah,
doing the
how did that
timetable
come
right?
about? How did Laundromat Resource even come about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it came about because I started talking to more owners, and that I mean, that really opened my that was my those were my light bulb moments where I was like, yeah, I just have to be relentlessly consistent about these foundational fundamental things, right? Like, duh, okay. But I started talking to all these owners, but then I started talking to a lot of people who had similar experiences than me,
Mhm.
as me, and I started having my eyes open to what I call, I've never heard anybody else call it anything really, or even talk about it, but what I call the Laundro-Mill. And what I've
Yeah.
seen happen is certain brokers will take a laundromat that, you know, is gonna be okay, but it's never gonna be great. And it's gonna be a lot of work, like my first one. And they'll sell it to a new time, a new first time owner, and make big promises. They'll run it for a year or two, realize it's not what they expected, go back to the broker and say, hey, I want out, I want to sell it. And they'll do it all over again. And I've
Which,
seen
by
that
the way, you
happen.
were tempted to do. You mentioned you
Oh yeah.
mentioned 15, 20 minutes ago that you were very tempted to do that. And if I were in that scenario, I would think that goes through most people's minds. So it would seem like
Oh
that's a
yeah.
pretty easy business to, I don't know if business is the right term, a pretty easy endeavor to
Hmm.
to just continue to monetize.
So is it
Yeah.
almost like a scam because then they get it back with like new equipment and whatever that owner tried to do with it?
Yeah. It's not good. And this, another caveat, this is not every laundromat broker.
Sure.
I do that. I don't do that, but I'm a laundromat agent broker now,
Mhm.
and I don't do that. There's a lot of really great ones, but there are some that will do that. So yeah. And, uh, so I started hearing about all this stuff and I was like, you know what? I have spent a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and money to learn all these lessons that all these other people are learning the way that I learned them. And nobody should ever have to learn these lessons the way that
Right.
I learned them. Never again. That was kind of my thing. Like, never again will someone have to learn the lessons I learned the way that I learned them. And so that's kind of the birth story of Laundromat Resource, where I kind of just started writing a couple blog posts. Um, and that was kind of the extent of it. I wasn't really planning on doing a whole lot else with it. But then started to get a little tiny bit of traction. I was like, it's easier for me to make like a video than write a blog post. So I was like, I'll just start making some videos on YouTube. And so I started making some YouTube videos, and those started getting traction. And I was like, I'd really love, like, well, right up until COVID hit, I was doing the best I had ever done, but I was like, I'd really love to know how the best people are doing it, And so I was like, I bet the best way to do that is to start a podcast and just start interviewing laundromat owners. And so that's where the podcast came about. And, when I started putting the word out there that I was looking for guests, I was hearing a lot of crickets until the pre-Laundromat Millionaire Dave Menz agreed to come on the show and was the very first guest on there. And that interview still to this day, like you mentioned, is the most popular interview on there by far.
I've got my title belt over there. You just can't see it. It's out of the picture.
Good. You got it. Good. So the first episode, I think we did our interview in April of 2020. And then in the beginning of May was the first episode, which was just my story. And then the second week of May was your interview. So
knee deep in COVID. I mean, right in the thick of it.
Yeah, there was nothing else going on really. I mean, my laundromats were open and stuff because essential business and all, but other than that, man, it was quiet. So it was an interesting time to start the podcast, but man, I'm super glad I did that, more than just about anything else I've been doing. So
when they come to Laundromat Resource, I want to do two things or three things maybe. One of them is I want to talk about why you launched it. Like, what was your mindset behind that? And you talked a little bit about that. What did you want it to become, and what did you think it would become?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I mentioned, I just wanted to share my lessons that I learned so other people didn't have to learn them the way I learned them. Right. So that's where it started. And then it kind of grew into, what? I started looking around and I was like, there are some resources for laundromat owners, but there's not a ton of resources out there. And there weren't a lot that I felt like I could really lean on when I was really struggling with my business. And so I was like, I should just start to create some resources for people that can help them during different phases of their laundromat journey.
So you have the YouTube channel, you have the podcast, and do you still do a blog at all?
Yeah, I'm still blogging. And
what other resources are there through Laundromat Resource? Isn't there some kind of forum?
Yeah, you can't throw out a name like Laundromat Resource and then be like, I only have one resource. Then again, you didn't call it Laundromat Resources. So maybe, okay. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I could sit here and name them all because I'm the biggest fan in the world of Laundromat Resource. But yeah, I mean, tell people.
What I started building was I started building out the blog a little more intentionally. I wrote a short ebook that's free to download.
How to buy your first laundromat.
Yeah.
And they can get that for free on your website.
It's free on the website. You can get it on there, download it. It's got some great information. I'm actually in the middle of, I'm in the tail end of writing a full book on how to buy your first laundromat. And the book is basically written, but I'm trying to create some, I think, super helpful resources that go along with the book. The whole laundromat resource thing, I'm always just like, what resources can we give?
Right.
So I'm doing that before. I was originally trying to launch it next in July of 2021. But I really want to create these other resources. And so anyways, I wrote the free ebook on there to try to help people figure out how to buy the laundromat because I didn't know how to buy a laundromat the right way. And then it just kind of grew from there. And I have this almost like bubble chart that I drew up, and in the center of it basically says content creation. And, in that category is things like blog posts, YouTube videos, podcast episodes, downloadable resources, which we have a bunch of free downloadable resources, especially if you create a free account. Then you can download a bunch of free, checklists, spreadsheets, worksheets, all that stuff. Started doing webinars, coaching calls. We have a consulting service, I guess, which we're actually starting to build out into multiple consultants now. And so there's a lot of stuff that we are trying to provide for owners and future owners to have successful businesses and to, like Carla mentioned at the beginning, figure out how to buy laundromat the right way and how to optimize your laundromat once you have it, so that you're not only making the most profit that you can be making in that business, but also serving the community the best way that you can serve it. And then scaling that out, if that's your desire, whether that's buying, 1,000 laundromats like the Willafords do, or if it's, building out a huge pickup and delivery business like you're doing, whatever that looks like. And so wherever people are at on their journey, we want to help them get to the next level.
And then what have you learned? Because you've now interviewed, I think it's close to 60 laundromat owners. And obviously you've probably met and networked with many others that you haven't, quote unquote, had on the podcast. So you're just getting a lot of really valuable information from amazing, entrepreneurs and business owners, all of us who have a unique and different backstory, but all of us who have a unique and different story in the industry and even outside the industry. I know when I talk to fellow laundromat owners, many, many, many of them have business experience in other ways. Right. And you can learn a ton from that if you kind of dig into that. Can you, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, what are some tips? And for those of you that haven't checked these out, you have to go check out all of them. Go check out all of the episodes because they are amazing. And it's a longer format, but they're so packed full of, like, Jordan does a great job of interviewing his guests, finding great guests to begin with, which is tough to do sometimes, and then pulling out their stories and teaching the lessons. What are some things that you personally, as the host who gets to know these people a little more intimately, have picked up on and learned that are, let's call them big picture things for helping us to run our businesses better?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question. I think there's a lot of things that we could pull out, try to pull out some of the big themes out of it. But, one of the common things that I see throughout some of the most successful owners that I've talked with, both on the podcast and just kind of offline, is just their commitment to the business. Right. And when I got in the industry, when I bought my first laundromat, I was sold, by the broker, but I was sold the message of, hey, it's an easy business. You just come in, collect the coins, you pay somebody a couple bucks to come make sure it's clean once a day. Easy peasy. Right. And so that was my whole thing. I wasn't on the flex time bandwagon. I was on the passive bandwagon. Right. And, while I would say a laundromat is more passive than a lot of businesses, it's not a passive business. It's a business. And anytime you have a business and anytime you're dealing with people, there's going to be things that you need to do. Right. But it's the successful owners are committed to the business. Right. And they're committed to doing all those foundational things and even beyond that. Right. They're thinking how, and here's the other lesson that really ties into this is, the most successful people in this business are not the people who got in it like I did, who were like, how can I make some money, on the side, right? The most successful people are the ones who are saying, and you say this all the time, how can I create the most value for my clients and my customers and my community, right? And if you go into it with that mindset, you're anything. This is not just laundromats. This is anything. This is just life. If you go into a relationship with this mindset, if you go into anything really, your schoolwork that you're doing with this mindset of how can I create the most value for the most people, it's going to cause you to think differently, and it's going to cause you to rise to levels that you never would have even considered beforehand, because the focus isn't on you anymore. It's not an internal focus. So not only are you going to go to new levels, you're going to serve your clients, your community, your customers better. You're going to be able to do more things, and you're probably going to make more money doing it that way. But even more than that is you're going to be more fulfilled as a person and this at the same time, which is a kind of the self-perpetuating cycle, right? If you're more fulfilled when you think about how much value you can give to other people, then it's just sort of like candy reward that's makes you crave more, right? Like, okay, well, how can I do more of that? How can I serve more people? So if you have a laundromat and you're serving your 1 mile radius really well, you might say, how can I serve more people? And that might cause you to go buy another laundromat, or that might cause you to expand that radius by, starting a pickup and delivery service or whatever the case may be. But, when you have that mindset, it becomes kind of addictive when you see the difference that you're making in people's lives.
That was amazing, by the way. And obviously, I completely agree with everything you said. So, one of my definitions of whether people give good advice or not is whether they agree with me. And so
Yeah, no.
I think that was great advice, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I took it verbatim from you, so that's why you think that.
No, what else have you pulled out? I mean, we're talking about, once again, 70, 80 hours of content
Yeah.
from some absolute rock stars in the industry. What's a couple more that jump out at you? Because I think this is super valuable to our audience. Going back to value, that's why we do this.
Yeah. Another thing that I've been very surprised by actually is, I've always thought of laundromats in one way, and they're very simple. They're not always easy, but they're very simple businesses. Like you mentioned earlier, they're simple, but just the various ways that you can be successful in this business is kind of mind boggling, right? It's really funny. So I think of a guy like, I had Rick Rome on the podcast, and he shut down his self-service laundromat location in order to focus solely on pickup and delivery, because he was doing so much volume of pickup and delivery, right? And then I talked to a guy like Peter Mayberry, who was on the podcast. He tried pickup and delivery and hated it. He hated the logistics side of it, and he doesn't want anything to do with it. And he told me just this last week that anytime there's a podcast episode that is in any way related to pickup and delivery, he'll just skip that one, because he just does not want anything to do with pickup and delivery, right? And yet both of these guys are super successful in the business. So one of the lessons that I learned is find something that fits you, and for me, one of the things I struggled with is I was just trying to be the square peg in the square hole, but I was round, right? And I just kept bumping into this. I just wasn't fitting right. And so I had to adjust my business to fit me more than, or the way that I was doing the business to fit my strengths more than trying to, up my weaknesses. Obviously you want to always improve your weaknesses, but if you focus solely on upping your weaknesses, you're going to struggle. It's like paddling uphill. So play to your strengths, continue to develop your weaknesses, but play to your strengths. And this business can suit a lot of different types of people in a lot of different types of ways. And that was really surprising to me, and how different. And we've had people on the podcast from all over the world and all over the country. And there's just so many ways to do this business.
There's one of the things I tell people all the time is that there's probably 6 or 7 kind of what I call foundational ways to run a laundromat, but then there's probably hundreds of hybrids of those, maybe thousands of hybrids of those. And I don't know that I know any laundromat owner that runs their business exactly like another laundromat owner.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the beauties of our industry. I mean, I make no secret about the fact that I believe this is the best small business in America. What I like to tell people is, the beauty of being a business, as you know, I've wanted to be a business owner and entrepreneur my entire life since I was a little kid. And one of the beauties behind that, even at a foundational, young, naive kid way of thinking, is that my business is my business. And one of the reasons I was never even remotely attracted to a franchise is because I wanted nothing to do with someone else telling me how to run my business. Now, part of it is I have control issues. Not that I see my wife nodding her head, not in the sense that I want to control other people, which is how people typically associate with having control issues,
He
but in a
wants no
sense
one
of,
to control
I want
him
no one to
ever.
control me. I'm a free spirit, for lack of a better term. And I think that's one of the beauties of our industry is you can get into the industry and you can think, which a lot of people do, that laundromats are just unattended commodities, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
And that is one way to run a business, to run a laundromat. And there's nothing wrong with that. We both know many, many people that are very successful in that business model.
Mhm.
But people like me, that's how I got into the industry. I honestly thought that's how it was. And as I dug and learned more about the industry, I learned all these different ways that I could run my business. But I
Mhm.
loved the fact that I could research them and look into them and pick people's brains that were successful and pick and choose little nuggets here and there and mold them into my own business model, which is what we have today. And I still continue to do that. There aren't a lot of businesses where you can do that, in my opinion. There are some, but there aren't a lot. They tend to just kind of be a proven commodity, a proven business. This is how you do it if you want to be successful. That's one of the things I love about our industry. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Is there any one more thing that kind of jumps out at
Yeah.
you?
All right, let me give you one more
Yeah.
big lesson that I think is huge key to success, and it's been the key to my clawing my way back. So, determination, providing value, those kinds of things. True. Yes. The other thing that I see successful people doing, and this is kind of related to what we were talking about actually, is pivoting when you need to pivot. Right. And this last year and a half has really kind of proven that out. And I think more prominently in other industries, like the restaurant industry, that's just trying to figure out a way to survive. And they've had to pivot their businesses to eating outside or delivering when they didn't before, whatever the case may be. But I think for any laundromat owner, being able to observe what's going on in the community, in the business, with your customers, being able to observe what's happening and make necessary changes to not get left behind. And I think, I was kind of mentioning this on a past podcast recently, that in the laundromat industry specifically right now has been changing at a pace, way more rapidly than maybe even 5 years ago.
Agree.
And for the past few decades, there's been more changes in the past 5 to 7 years than the past few decades combined, I think.
Absolutely.
And the danger I think that poses to laundromat owners, because we're pretty used to just business as usual, because this industry is a stable industry, and it's been pretty much the same way for a long time. The danger that poses to us is that if we're not observing the changes that are happening right now and just figuring out ways to pivot with them, the owners who don't do that are going to be the owners who own the zombie mats 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, because they're just going to get left behind as technology is more and more rapidly introduced into our industry, as management tools are being introduced into our industry. All kinds of things are happening right now. All of that kind of culminates to, can you observe your surroundings and pivot where you need to pivot? And, that can come in the form of, just kind of feeling your way through it. But I think maybe on the horizon for our industry is coming where we're going to have to start using data more in our business to help us make better decisions, and using that data to show us where we need to pivot and how we need to pivot. So the best owners I see out there are just kind of keeping their eye on what's happening, and they're utilizing their experience, they're utilizing their networks, and they're utilizing data to help them make better business decisions and pivot where they need to pivot. That was a long answer.
It was, but I think that's great advice for any business. I think being able to adapt, being able to pivot, being able to, look at the situation and adjust your business as necessary. I think that's that's needed in any business to survive and to thrive. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that anytime that, because I'm big on researching history and learning from others and other industries. One thing I would point out is I think that's maybe the single most common factor to a successful business that has longevity. Whether you're talking multi-generational things or even just I started a business when I was 21, is that a better version of itself when I'm 51?
Yeah.
Or did I go gangbusters for 3 or 4 years and then coast and hang out on the beach in Hawaii for the next 25 years? What was my mindset behind that? And I think I just like, obviously this is something I already knew, but thank you for bringing that to the top of mind, because I think that's just absolute gold. If you know, there's a lot of valuable things in this conversation today in this episode. I think I would pull that right straight to the top, because we have to be, pushing ourselves to be better tomorrow than we were today at all times. And look, you've mentioned it before on other podcasts you've had, Jordan, and this is a great point too. If you ever reach the point where you're not doing that or don't want to do that, that's okay. But it may be time for you to find something else to do. Mm-hmm. Now, I love the laundromat industry, but if the time comes when I'm 80 years old and I'm not passionate about this industry, or maybe 50 years old when I'm not passionate about this industry, then I will move on to something else that I'm passionate about. And these things do come. I think they're natural cycles. But if you look at these things over all industries, I think it's very, very consistent that these people are always trying to evolve and innovate and be better at what they do. And I think that a lot of amazing opportunities that are coming in our industry to collect data through payment systems and operating systems and point of sale systems and things like that. I think a lot of laundromat owners out there, this is just my opinion, but a lot of laundromat owners out there that have been doing this successfully for a long time just tell themselves behind closed doors, I mean, I've been doing it for 25 years this way. I think I'll be okay. Mm-hmm. And what I always tell people is, in that scenario, you've been doing it 25 years for that way and it worked, but that doesn't mean it'll work for the next 25 years. Yeah. So if you want to be top of industry, that has to be your constant mindset. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And as someone who has watched every single episode of the Laundromat Resource podcast that exists front to back, I would agree with you that that's something you consistently see in the top operators. Mm-hmm. And even outside of your podcast, I think you can point to that pretty consistently, that they're always pushing and driving forward. So that's pretty amazing. So listen, now the second to last question for you, and then I might have a third to last question. No, seriously. So what's next for Laundromat Resource? You're sitting here today, and this episode's being recorded in June 2021. What are things that are coming, and what's your vision that you don't even fully, because I know how you and I operate. We know where we want to go, but we're not sure how we're going to get there, kind of stuff. Yeah. So what's your vision moving forward for Laundromat Resource? What do people that are big fans of your platform, what can we be excited about in the future?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing to even say some of this stuff, because I literally don't know, where it's going to go, or where, it could just all stop all of a sudden. And that would be okay, for me, but I'll just, shirk the embarrassment, and I'm just going for it. So
go for it, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I mentioned already that I'm working on, getting a book out there on how to buy, your first laundromat. So that's out there. I have a couple other books in mind for that. So, but with that, I am starting a publishing company, and I probably just be Laundromat Resource Publishing. I don't know, but I don't know if I want to pigeonhole myself that. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Anyways, and with the goal of getting more resources out there, whether that's books, whether that's magazines or catalogs, whether that's more online, blog articles, those kinds of things. But that is one of the big goals that I have out there. I mentioned I'm building out a consulting team, and I've just really seen a huge need for that. And, I know you do consulting, and I refer clients to you often, actually, hey, Dave might be a good one for you to talk to, And
I know he's done some referrals to you as
Absolutely.
well. Like,
Appreciate
oh, you're
that.
out in California. I think Jordan might be good for you.
yeah, he sends
Absolutely.
me all the hard ones though.
Hey, I want to challenge you. I want to drive you forward. I want to make you better tomorrow
Yeah, thank you.
than you were
I
yesterday.
appreciate that. Sharpening the sword. I like that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So all that stuff. I want to do more and more events, both online and in person,
Mhm.
together. So I started doing webinars. So I do a webinar every single week. It's a live webinar.
Are
Thursdays.
those free too?
They're free.
Nice.
They're live. They're interactive. And I warn people that if they're not interactive, I can tend to get a little loopy to entertain myself. So they're usually pretty interactive.
So these are
and-
free and they can sign up on your website, laundromatresource.com.
Yeah, right on the
And they
homepage.
are, I know
top
they're
page.
content specific. Can you throw out a quick couple that have been maybe more popular, subject
Yeah.
matters?
So the two biggest ones are how to buy your first laundromat and how to analyze a laundromat deal.
Okay.
But I'm just now starting to host webinars with other people in the industry who have things, whether that be knowledge and a tool that they can purchase or something, a resource for them. But I'm offering, more webinars now with hosting them with other people joining me, which I'm really excited about because my goal is not to, be the one educating or even my goal is to get people together. That's my whole goal, because I think, and I say this a lot on the podcast, but like we're all gonna, reach success, whatever that means to you, faster and even more if we're working together and if we're helping each other out. And so my goal is to kind of do that. So I'm excited about those webinars and getting more voices into those. And there's already some really cool ones, coming up. Alex, the CEO of Sense, is doing one. Nick Chaplot of Startup is doing one with me. I have a guy coming on who my audience hasn't met yet, but he does some interesting stuff with real estate and 1031s. So we have a lot of investors who, frequent our platform, I guess. And so that will really help them out. And so there's just a lot of cool stuff coming up. And so I'm excited about all that. I'm trying to do like a bigger online event. I'm calling it LaundryCon. It's a, kind of conference style event, which I'm really excited about. It's coming up in October 2021. And you can check out a little information about that at laundromatresource.com/laundrycon if you like. It's not like convict, but it's more like conference, what I mean?
Conference.
Not like the people at my laundromat who are LaundryCon. Yeah, that's coming. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm starting out building out a marketplace so that, people can list their laundromats for sale so that transactions, can get going on the platform. Nice. There's just a lot of stuff that I'm working on that I'm very, very excited about. And again, most of it is it revolves around, getting, education and resources and networking all happening, on the platform, off the platform. It doesn't really matter to me. What matters is that people are getting together and doing this business right and continuing to grow themselves personally and also their businesses. So.
Yeah. Well, what you're doing over there at Laundromat Resource is absolutely amazing. Once again, Carla and Dave Menz, huge fans of yours. Anything we can do to support you and encourage you, we want to do.
Thank you.
Folks that are watching and listening to this, if in this podcast, if you ever already jumped on Laundromat Resource while we're talking, you're crazy. So you need to get over there because the resources are abundant. They're growing every day. And Jordan is a very genuine, sincere person who genuinely just has what we call the heart of a servant and just genuinely wants to help our industry grow and share information. So whether you're checking out the webinars or, by the way, he didn't mention it, but he does have a forum where laundromat owners can get together, and it's pretty cool. It's broken down into like different topic specific.
Is it like a discussion board?
Yep. Kind of a discussion board. You want to mention, explain.
What's the forum?
We're probably not doing as good of a job as you would.
Yeah.
Tell
Well,
people about your forum.
I completely forgot about it. So good for you for remembering. No. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a forum. We have a few different forums on our forum. One is just a laundromat forum where you can go and discuss how to buy your laundromat or optimize your scale, whatever, need be. There's also a commercial real estate section on the forum. I know a lot of people are trying to buy the real estate with laundromats, or they own commercial real estate and they want to put laundromat in, or anything along those lines. So there's a commercial real estate forum. There's my favorite right now forum. I mean, I like the laundromats. I like all of the forums. My favorite right now is the new member introductions forum. So you can sign up as a member on Laundromat Resource. There's a free one, and again, you get access to a bunch of stuff. There's a pro membership also, but either way, whether the free or the pro membership, there's a new member introductions forum where something really cool has been happening over there, where people will go over there and introduce themselves, basically say who they are, where they're located, and where they're at in their journey of laundromat ownership. And I've started seeing people geographically close to each other start connecting on there, and that's just been really cool. That's like my favorite thing going on the forums right now. Answering questions is awesome, and helping people figure this thing out. Obviously that's why we're here too, but seeing people connect with each other, connecting with people that have the same mindset and who are driving forward to do the same, towards the same goals, is just really cool for me to see. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for everything you do for the industry. Amazing stuff. Guys, check out everything over there. The last thing I'll throw out there is Jordan, through Laundromat Resource, also has a marketing service. Where they provide laundromat marketing services. So go check that out as well. Is that, what's your website for that?
Just laundromatresource.com/get online. We build websites and we do Facebook and Google ad management.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Yep. Absolutely. Check it out, guys. For sure. Jordan is a rock star in our industry, doing bigger and better stuff. And when he says he doesn't know, he might not be doing this much longer. No, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to let that happen. We're in this together, my friend, and I appreciate all that you do for our industry. All right. Really last question. Ready?
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, just in general?
Answer that however you'd like.
Oh,
personal,
okay.
Life, business,
kids.
You know what? Yeah. This is probably the best advice I've ever been given. It's by my mom. And my mom used to tell me when I was growing up, you have been given a lot. You should, when you interact with people, make them feel like they're special, because they are special. There's something valuable and unique in everybody, right? And if you treat people that way, kind of going back to, not only is it going to, make them feel the way that everybody should feel, because that's how we are. God's created us all, unique, and I don't want to say special, because I don't know, it just sounds, God made you special. But seriously, like, valuable, you are a valuable, person. And when you treat people that way, not only does it make them feel the way they should be feeling anyways, but it makes you feel good too, because, again, you're doing something for someone else. And this is a little bit of a side note, but I found, personally, when I've been, struggling, if I've been like down or depressed, or, I just, sometimes you can get in those downward spirals. And as a pastor, I've seen this a lot, with other people too. When they get in this downward spiral, a lot of times it's because we start to get focused inside on ourselves and our internal. And the way out of that, and this is easier said than done a lot of times, and the further down that spiral you are, the harder it is. But the way out of that is to start to try to shift your focus outside. And number one, be grateful for whatever little morsel of thing you can be grateful for. And number two, is to find, the good, the unique, the valuable in other people and start to help them see that. And that is water for your soul, not only, and it's water for their soul too. But that's completely unrelated to anything we've been talking about, but it's just
Not
something.
really though.
Yeah, I don't think
I
it's
mean,
unrelated
ties,
at all.
It ties to how you're
Agreed.
serving the industry by, reaching out to other laundromat owners. You value them and you value the choices they're going to make because you don't want them to make the same mistakes that you made. You value your customer. You were talking about your customer connections, how you still have that laundromat that's kind of in a rough neighborhood, but that's providing a vital service to that community, and you've gotten to know the people there. I mean, I think that's wonderful life advice your mom gave you, but it's business advice too. It's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen,
Yeah.
if you didn't get enough great advice from Jordan Berry of the Laundromat Resource, you got it from his mom, straight from the
right.
mouth, straight from the mouth of mothers. That's powerful stuff. Seriously, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us today, my friend. And just so you guys know, me and Jordan talk often, and we're always up to some crazy stuff. And we're going to be doing more great stuff together. We call it collaboration, as we get to know each other better and grow our friendship. And we're just going to keep bringing value to the industry. Absolutely,
Yeah.
we got some plans.
We haven't even mentioned we do a monthly live Q&A on our YouTube channels. Like, talk about resources. I
No
mean,
kidding.
genuinely, the main reason I do those is just so I get to hear from the mouth of this guy, because he is chock full of wisdom. And but those are super good, and not just because we're both there answering questions, but in those chats, again, my favorite part is there's a lot of industry professionals, a lot of top-notch owners and operators that attend these live Q&As and are answering questions alongside us, and a lot of times better than us even. So
Listen, guys, our audience, we are so appreciative of you guys and your support. Me, Jordan, Carla, the CLA, which is an amazing organization that tries to serve our industry. All of us that are trying to drive our industry forward to greater things. I'm just going to speak collectively for all of us that we are all appreciative of our audiences. And I know there's a lot of cross-pollinating going on, and most of the people that listen to this show also listen to the Laundromat Resource and are also members at CLA, and you're wise to do these things. So listen, this was fantastic with you, Jordan. Thank you so much for doing this today. Go check out everything that Jordan is doing at Laundromat Resource, and we will see you guys next time on our next episode of Laundromat Millionaire Business Podcast. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.